Hello and welcome to Brilliant POV. The United States' stance on supporting Ukraine has been a contentious issue that has sparked debates and stirred emotions for several years. Supporters of U.S. aid to Ukraine argue that it is crucial in safeguarding Ukraine's sovereignty and deterring Russian aggression in the region. They highlight the significant military and economic aid that the U.S. has provided, as well as diplomatic efforts to isolate Russia and exert pressure on it to cease its hostile actions. On the other hand, critics of U.S. involvement in Ukraine caution that it risks escalating tensions with Russia, potentially leading to a catastrophic conflict. They also question the effectiveness of U.S. aid and propose that the resources could be better utilized for domestic purposes. In this video, we will delve into the pros and cons of U.S. support for Ukraine, examining its implications for both countries and the international community at large. Join us as we explore the complexities and emotions of this divisive issue. Some of the pros of U.S. support for Ukraine are: many supporters of U.S. aid to Ukraine believe that it is important to promote democracy and support countries that are striving for greater sovereignty and independence. Ukraine has had a tumultuous history, including being under Soviet rule for several decades, and supporters of U.S. aid argue that Ukraine deserves the chance to determine its own future. Additionally, many supporters of U.S. aid to Ukraine argue that promoting democracy and sovereignty in Ukraine can have positive ripple effects throughout the region. They believe that a stable and democratic Ukraine can serve as a model for other countries in the region, encouraging them to pursue similar reforms and fostering greater regional stability. Moreover, supporters of U.S. aid to Ukraine believe that it is a moral imperative to support countries that are under threat or facing aggression from external powers. In the case of Ukraine, many argue that Russia's annexation of Crimea and support for separatists in eastern Ukraine represent a clear violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. By providing aid to Ukraine, the U.S. can help support a country that is standing up for its own independence and sovereignty. One of the most significant reasons why people support U.S. aid to Ukraine is concern over Russian aggression. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its support for separatists in eastern Ukraine have raised concerns about the stability and security of the region. Supporters of U.S. aid argue that providing assistance to Ukraine can help deter Russian aggression and prevent further incursions into Ukrainian territory. They point to the significant military and economic aid that the U.S. has provided to Ukraine, as well as diplomatic efforts to isolate Russia and pressure it to end its aggression. They also argue that the U.S. must take a strong stance against Russian aggression in order to protect its own national security interests and those of its allies in the region. Moreover, supporters of U.S. aid to Ukraine argue that the conflict in Ukraine is not just a regional issue, but a global one. They believe that allowing Russia to violate international norms and borders sets a dangerous precedent for other countries and threatens global security. By supporting Ukraine, the U.S. is sending a message that it will not tolerate such actions and is willing to take a stand for international law and norms. Another reason why people support U.S. aid to Ukraine is the country's strategic importance. Ukraine is located at a crucial intersection between Europe and Asia, and is a major transit route for energy supplies from Russia to Europe. This makes Ukraine an important player in regional and global politics, and a key partner for the U.S. Supporters of U.S. aid argue that a stable and prosperous Ukraine can help promote regional stability and strengthen U.S. partnerships with other countries in the region. They also believe that Ukraine has the potential to be a significant economic and trading partner for the U.S., which could have positive benefits for both countries. Moreover, some supporters argue that Ukraine's strategic location and importance make it a potential target for hostile actors. They believe that providing assistance to Ukraine can help deter aggression and protect U.S. national security interests. Some of the cons of U.S. support for Ukraine are: the concern over escalating tensions with Russia is one of the most significant reasons why people may not support U.S. aid to Ukraine. There is a fear that providing military aid to Ukraine could lead to an escalation of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, which could ultimately draw the U.S. into a larger conflict. This could have significant consequences, both for the U.S. and for the international community. Critics argue that Russia may see U.S. involvement in Ukraine as a threat to its national security, which could lead to an increase in aggressive behavior towards the U.S. and its allies. They also worry that the U.S. could become embroiled in a long-term conflict that could be costly in terms of resources and human life. There is also a concern that providing military aid to Ukraine could provoke Russia into taking more aggressive action, potentially leading to a larger conflict in the region. Some argue that the U.S. should instead focus on diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully, rather than risking military escalation. Critics of U.S. aid to Ukraine often argue that the money spent on foreign aid to Ukraine could be better utilized for domestic priorities, such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. They argue that the US has its own challenges and needs, and that providing aid to other countries should not take precedence over addressing domestic issues. Additionally, some critics of US aid to Ukraine argue that the aid provided is not being used effectively, and that corruption and mismanagement within the Ukrainian government prevent aid from reaching those who need it most. This raises concerns about the accountability and effectiveness of foreign aid, which could further discourage people from supporting US aid to Ukraine. However, supporters of US aid to Ukraine argue that the money spent on aid is a relatively small portion of the overall US budget, and that it is necessary to support Ukraine's sovereignty and deter Russian aggression in the region. They also argue that providing aid to Ukraine can have positive economic and strategic benefits for the US, such as increasing trade and building stronger partnerships with other countries. Another reason why people may not support US aid to Ukraine is a lack of trust in the Ukrainian government. Some people have doubts about the effectiveness of aid to Ukraine due to concerns about corruption and political instability within the Ukrainian government. Critics argue that US aid to Ukraine could be misused or siphoned off by corrupt officials, which could further exacerbate the country's problems. They argue that the US should instead focus on addressing corruption and improving governance within Ukraine before providing additional aid. Supporters of US aid to Ukraine, on the other hand, argue that corruption and political instability are precisely the reasons why Ukraine needs US assistance. They argue that US aid can help support democratic institutions, promote good governance, and provide much-needed resources to address the country's economic and security challenges. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.